Hello, my name is Juliette. I'm coordinator with the One Democratic State Initiative. And today I'm speaking with Janet, so New York activist involved in the Bronx Interwar Coalition, the Bronx Green Party, and Jewish Voice for Peace. And by who is also who has joined the Green Party recently in New York. Can you both maybe introduce yourself?
Yes, I guess I'll start it off. I'm a longtime activist. I sort of got into it around 2016. I've had I'm Jewish, and I've had a lifelong interest in Palestinian rights, which has unfortunately been brought to a head, particularly acutely in the last year and a half.
And
Sorry.
okay. Sorry.
And I've been involved most recently with a lot of rallies, with confronting and bringing truth to politicians in our area.
And so, yes, I'm in New York City, and I joined the Green Party when Jill Stein decided to run for president. That's when I joined the Green Party. And as Janet, I mean, I'm activist in other groups like JVP, Code Pink, and other autonomous groups protesting the media. The mainstream media here in the US and New York. And yes, that's it.
Thank you. So since you're both part of the Bronx Green Party, can you maybe speak a bit about these groups, this group and in particular, and if you want also to speak briefly about the other groups that you're part of, that would be great.
Sure. I'm definitely a booster of the entire Green Party. I am proud that the Bronx Greens, we're particularly feisty. We live up to our Bronx reputation. I'm also, speaking of Bronx, again, the Bronx Anti-War Coalition, which goes above and beyond. I mean, every rally is important, but Bronx Anti-War Coalition and the Bronx Greens make a point of tying together how foreign policy and domestic policy intertwine with the US, and how like the focus on one and empire causes problems with how we're ignored and abandoned in the US. So both great groups, and JVP, they bring it like nobody else. I love the things they've initiated. Both Grand Central, and most recently they occupied Trump Tower.
Yes, and when I started with Code Pink in New York, mainly it was when the ICJ hearing, I mean, South Africa, because of the ICJ hearing, so we were trying to get other countries to sign on or to support. So we would go, this is back in January 2024. We used to go a lot to all the UN missions in Manhattan to try to see if if they can get support. This is how my involvement started with Code Pink. And sometimes when I go to Washington, D.C., I join Medea Benjamin in the hallways of Congress when they try to talk to staffers or maybe shame some of the members of Congress that are passing by in the hallways, and try to see the 1% change that could happen. Otherwise, with the Jewish Voice for Peace, JVP, with all their activities actions that they do, I try to get as involved as possible. Yes, that's what we try to do whatever we can do. Things have only gotten worse on the ground, but we feel like we cannot be silenced. That's number one. They're not going to silence us as much as they're trying. Also, at least the people in Palestine, they can see that we haven't stopped. We're not going to forget about them, and we're not. So that's why.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's definitely one of the importance that we see in international activism. More specifically, when it comes to the Bronx Greens, I find it interesting to see that American political party is taking stands at this level. So I wanted to ask, so for you, you said that the Bronx Greens in particular were very feisty. Can you maybe first elaborate a bit on what kind of actions are being led, and also what do you see being the comments that create this connection?
Oh gosh, I mean, there's too much to pick from. We actually, the Bronx Greens, we were right after October 7th, we were the first group the next day. I mean, it was a small group at first, things build, there's momentum. We were the first people out there in Grand Central, bringing attention to, we can't lead this to slaughter. And unfortunately, we were being very precedent about what we were thinking would happen from there. But, you know, we jump into the breach immediately. We were also involved, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more, we were directly involved with the petition to restore historic Palestine, which was in front of the UN. And that was in November of 2023.
I'm interrupting here, and Janet, I mean, when she say we, it's literally her and someone else that are really always creative and initiating and leading. And I would say we are the followers.
No, you're just as vital.
Seriously.
We may be louder at first, but we're just part of the equation. There's someone who's not here right now, and it's okay to mention her name, who's the de facto leader of the Bronx Greens. Her name is Deb. And Deb is about 5'5". And there is more energy,
Yes,
volume coming out of Deb.
exactly.
It's amazing, and it's very inspirational.
We have to mention also that sometimes we've been to the senators' offices to try to talk to them, and our senator Gillibrand, she refused to see any of her constituents, so we were not even able to talk to her staffers. Remember, that's when we met, I think, the first time we met, Janet, when we met at in the lobby of the office of Gillibrand's.
That is correct. By the way, we have another entrance, Ruth. This is Ruth. Just to touch on what Maya was just mentioning is, yeah, we showed up. Gillibrand and Schumer, you know, share an office. All we wanted to do was deliver a letter. And at least Schumer, and I have a lot of things to say about Schumer, but at least Schumer sent down people to talk to us. Gillibrand wouldn't even take a letter. How is that representing? How is that leading? How is that in any shape, way, or form a legitimate form of government if you won't even talk to your constituents? And those are the things we need to call out, among many other things.
Yes.
Thank you. Maybe before we continue, Ruth, it's nice to see you and to meet you. Can you introduce yourself?
Well, I'm in the group with Janet, the Bronx Neighbors for Palestine, and I teach at Lehman College, though I'm getting close to retirement. I'm interested in hearing what other people have to say about one democratic state. It seems so obvious, but there's not an obvious path. So yeah, I'm just listening. You know, I'm not sure what's going on here, but Janet put something on the chat, and I said, sure, I'll come and listen. Yeah,
It's great to see you. If you want to just listen, that's totally okay. But also, happy to hear your take on some of these questions. Maybe if you can also introduce a bit so it's the Neighbor Coalition for Palestine.
It's just a small group in the Bronx, which I just joined a couple of months ago. Maybe Janet's been in it longer. And we've done tabling, and the group has co-sponsored a film showing at Lehman College, which was very nice, and has shown some films in the neighborhood. Bronx is a pretty, has a pretty, it's a difficult terrain. It's a very mixed terrain population wise, but I think a lot of us feel like we need to do something in the neighborhoods, and not everything is always down by Foley Square and Union Square. And there's people that are thinking about these things all over the city, all over the country. And sometimes you have to go to them. So I guess that's the idea, wouldn't you say, Janet, behind the Bronx Neighbors?
Yes, I do. I think education is a huge one. I'm sure you know that there's a big blackout in the US for info. I mean, unless you're involved in like independent media, you don't even see, a good number of people don't see what's happening. And on top of everything else, because of our economy, people are working and working and working. They get home, they turn on the TV for 2 seconds, watch CNN, they're off, which means they don't have time to research. So it's people like us who know things that the guy on the street or the gal on the street wouldn't know. And it's up to us to bring it to them, whether it's like with films or tabling, or there's something else that we could discuss later. A few of us have done an autonomous projector project where we just stand on the streets and we blast, visuals of Gaza and say, hey, you have to know this is happening, and stand up against it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for thanks for sharing. It's very I don't know the right word, but heartwarming to in a way, to see all these different initiatives that you're representing, and to see the dynamics that exist at the level of the Bronx and beyond, in terms of solidarity, and not only solidarity but common activism. How do you think that this allyship between different groups, whether it's the ones you represent, others, and of course Palestinian groups, how can these different groups work together and support each other?
Well, I personally, and I think everybody else has to weigh in too. I mean, I think the most important thing is realizing that what matters is the cause and the principles. It's the group. Groups are important, but it's not about the groups. So anyone who's there to stand for what we're fighting for, doesn't matter what group you're in. We're all the same.
Also, for example, I am on different groups, including other like Palestine Youth Movement groups and other groups. So sometimes a lot is shared. A lot of the announcements are shared, videos are shared. For example, just now, Janet, your video has been shared with the broad New York City for Palestine group, and they thanked me for sharing that amazing video that you did. So it's also sharing information, which is also important. I'm also with the group of Columbia alumni for Palestine. So all of this is intertwined, everything.
One thing, like a person like me, I'm kind of immune in general, they say like first they came for this one. I would be kind of like late in that chain. So I'm always glad to sign everything, because, when you need signatures, nobody's gonna be able to do anything to me.
Okay.
That's like, I was one of the arrested at Grand Central.
Uh-huh.
There were people who just couldn't take the arrest because it's like it could have gotten them fired. I'm retired. So I'm like, yeah, go ahead. Here, go for it.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is why the Jewish elders are playing a good role, because they're like, yeah, what are you going to do to me?
Yes, and maybe we can explain, maybe, if I don't know how much Juliette knows about this arrest, because sometimes with, let's say with JVP, when there's an action, they ask you, do you want to sign up for the red action or the green or yellow action? Because if it's red, it means, let's say we're in a building and then the police says you have to vacate now. If you refuse to vacate, then, you know, they're going to arrest you and it goes on your records. But when they arrest you, this is probably when the media would talk about it, because the media, the mainstream media, is completely oblivious about, I mean, or maybe on purpose doesn't want to cover any of those, especially when it's by Jewish people. They don't want to cover it. So that's why.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I saw in other contexts this, actually even related, there is always this principle of those who have the least risks that are taking the fall to avoid others to support. It's interesting, and I'd like also to hear from your experience, whether it's in relation to that, but more generally your experience of being a pro-Palestine activist in the US at the moment. Yeah, if you can, you know, you said before that things are getting worse and worse on the ground. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Me, when I said that, yes, I said that. I mean, I definitely deep down, I felt last year that at least our activism, I felt like we had hope. I felt like we're doing something, especially when the encampment started and everything. I felt there was a hope. Now I feel like there's no hope in what we're doing, but we're not going to stop. That's the thing. And in terms of being careful or not careful, personally, when I'm in a big protest, I don't care to cover my face. But when I'm in an autonomous group of 10 people, I make sure to cover completely, because, you know, why take the risk? So that's how we do. And we try to be as careful as possible. But again, we're not going to, I don't want to stop. I'm definite that I won't stop.
We can't be silent. It's being Jewish. I mean, this should be true of everybody, but being Jewish, you know, we are acutely aware, and Ruth, I'm sure you can chime in on this too, that, you know, it's silence that allows things like the Holocaust. So for us to now, especially with that history that we have taught to us from day one, that to be silent now about this would just be the biggest betrayal. And so regardless, we want results. We do. But even if there were no hope, we still have to speak. Ruth, thoughts?
Well, I'm not Jewish, but
Oh,
I'm
I'm sorry.
certainly certainly a descendant of the Holocaust and all the other Holocausts that have been perpetrated, you know. So yeah, I mean, that was, it's yeah. I actually, I'm a little upset, and have been a little upset for quite a while, that the Palestine issue seems to be an issue that Palestinians and Jewish Americans and Israelis are responsible for, you know, as if Americans and Christian Americans and non-Christian Americans are, you know, are just watching. We're obviously not just watching. We're either protesting as much as we can, or we're collaborating and approving. So you know, I was just telling someone, I just wish there was a Lutheran atheist voice for peace, You know, but you know, speaking of groups, maybe I'll try to start it.
So this is a kind of hard transition, or but maybe if you can share the three of you, your vision of Palestine. What do you think that the future of Palestine should be?
Okay, so I mean, you're asking for our point of views. I feel like it's the Palestinians in Palestine who they are the people who need to decide. But from an outsider not being in Palestine, there's no question the one state is the solution. No question about it, because there's nothing left in the two states. There's less than 10% maybe left. And that's what the left-wing Zionists want you to believe in the two states is the solution. So, because this way they get the 10% that's left and then we forget about it.
My position is I'm very much pro single state. My view is that the concept of an ethno-state at all is completely immoral, completely unjust. Right after the partition, which I don't think should have happened, of Palestine, there was Resolution 194, which was all of the Palestinian refugees can come back home. And that's never even been implemented. You know, we never would have pushed for a two-state solution for Nazi Germany. We never would have pushed for a two-state solution for apartheid South Africa. As far as I'm concerned, a government is not legitimate unless they give the same citizen rights to everyone, regardless of ethnicity, religion, what have you. And that's true of what we need to do here with rebuilding and restitution. And not only that, but even beyond the issue of justice is the issue that if you had a two-state solution, there'll always be a border for the Israel side of it to say, oh, that's a threat, and preemptively attack. You need to integrate. My 5 cents.
I'm also in the professors and staff union of City University, and we've argued a lot. We have a minority in the leadership of the elected representatives that are just very Zionist, and then we have an unknown number of members, but people quit over thinking that the union is leaning too much. Is criticizing Israel too much, and the union really doesn't criticize Israel too much. But in many discussions, one of the most vocal Zionists said, well, I understand your position, Ruth. You don't believe in religious nationalism or ethno-nationalism. That's your position. And the fact is, though, that nationalism is a kind of a emotional and symbolic concept that includes sort of a blood element or a relationship among people element. So it's a little hard to push that, because I mean that's sort of leading to fascism all over the world. The idea that our nation should be people that are related to each other, and the others should be kicked out. And the Enlightenment idea, and the idea that we supposedly feel is a better idea, is the multinational state and the multi-ethnic state, and everyone is equal and blah, 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 blah. But that's hard to push, and there's such a pushback against it right now. So, but I think that I kind of agree with Rashid Khalidi that the Israelis are there to stay and the Palestinians are there to stay. And so I would just maybe amend what Maya was saying is it's not up to me. It's up to the people who live there, but I would include the Israelis who live there. I don't know how to how to exclude the dual citizen Americans from Brooklyn who live there. I don't think they should be allowed to be part of it, but it's really, you know, I would like to promote a vision, and maybe that's what I see. You know, the big people in this world are not going to do what we want, but the regular people in this world could be presented with a vision that makes sense. So maybe that's what we're talking about, or that's maybe what I'm talking about, is some kind of one state where, except for these, you know, Brooklyn folks, those that live there and have lived there most of their lives or their whole lives, it's theirs now, and they have to work it out, and other people have to help them work it out and discourage them from killing each other. I guess the model would be South Africa. I don't think it's that great, but it was something that the whole world sort of agreed upon, that that's the way it should go. Now, the difference, of course, between South Africa and Israel in the American mind is that, well, Jewish Americans are attached to the idea of a Jewish homeland, or at least a refuge. I'm just reading this book now, Our American Israel, and she's going over the history, which is not that long ago, when there were different opinions, like some place to send the people from the camps, from the displaced person camps, and send them to Palestine as a refuge. And then there was the Zionist thing, and make it a country, make it an ethno-nationalist state. And there was a tension between those ideas and debate about those ideas. So I think maybe we need to bring that back up again, because my Jewish friends who are so emotional, but like, where will we go? And there has to be a refuge, and this kind of thing, you know, this is real, and it's holding us back in this country. I mean, there's the American identification with Israel, the non-Jewish American identification with Israel, and the American financial connections and political connections and the weapons industries. And there's all that, which is the biggest thing, I think. But on the level of talking to people, I think you do have to deal with this idea, which is different from South Africa, is what's going to happen to Jewish people if you have a one national state, and they you know, they could become a minority, and you know, the demographic question. They could become a minority, and then the anti-Semitic Arabs could vote that they not be citizens and send them to camps. I'm sorry to say that, but I think that this is the subtext that's running through a lot of people's minds, and it has to be understood that that's going on in people's minds.
So, yeah, but maybe you can tell your friends they can go or stay. I mean, if your friends are here, they can stay here, because this doesn't belong to them to start with.
But
I mean,
if they're there a long time, they're like our immigrants.
Except for the 6% who used to live there, they're still welcome, of course, because they used to live there for centuries, the 6%, and their children, of course, but that's it.
Yeah, I don't really agree with the idea of sending immigrants back to their country.
Why not?
It's an immigrant, if it's somebody from Brooklyn, yes.
But why not to their the countries they came from? They came to steal other people's houses and homes.
I agree. I mean, all of this happened, but I don't think you can turn back history. And I don't think you can deport immigrants.
But it's been less than a lifetime. This only happened in 1948.
Yeah, I know, but you can't, like, after a person is somewhere and they put down roots and they have kids somewhere, then that's where they are. That's why I don't think of a one-state solution has to be expelling all the immigrants.
Well,
that's a good idea.
I don't think it's being argued necessarily that they have to all be expelled, but if somebody, for instance, is in a stolen house, so let's flip.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Let's flip.
Don't treat me as the enemy here, you guys. You know.
But yeah, no, I mean, just, and yeah, no one's an enemy here. This is the kind of conversations we need to have. But like, let's flip this. Suppose tomorrow we find stolen property from the Holocaust in a German house. It needs to be,
Yeah,
even though it's been owned by whoever stole it and the family that stole it for so long. I mean, what about, if you have settlers that moved in, then you can say, hey, look, this,
you gotta move out.
you gotta,
Yeah.
you gotta move out of the house that you stole. You can go somewhere else.
Right, right.
And
This
if
is
you're,
like,
and if you're,
did they even do this in South Africa? Which they
Uh,
should have, but I think one of the problems with South Africa was not such a great model is they didn't go all the way. They didn't go all the
They did
way.
it in Algeria, for example. Settlers left, except those who wanted to stay as Algerians.
peacefully.
After 130 years.
I would think that anybody who actually wants peace would be okay with that. It's like, okay, now I'm a citizen of whatever, New Palestine or whatever they end up calling it.
Yeah, Algeria is not the same case as Palestine because the Algerians won. You
Who
know,
says that Palestinians are not going to win?
just saying. They didn't have to ask
It's
Americans their opinion.
I think
I
I think the
you-
solution honestly goes back because we're saying all of this, and Ruth, you just said it. I mean, it's a big power, which is the Israeli lobby, the military industrial complex, the media, and of course, and that's why I feel the real solution is to dismantle the superpack, which is unlimited amount of financing in our elections. And that's why we need to have a third party or a green party, because as long as there's no green party or third party, we're always going to get the Democrats and the Republicans doing, the same things that's been happening. And I feel that's the only solution for a change.
And the way that things have been going with Trump and BRICS rising, they all of that the empire backing Israel and what we deal with here might be weakening. And there might be an opening for that third party and change.
Yeah.
I don't think it's AIPAC that's the problem. I think the US and Israel are partners all over the world. And it's real hard to beat that. And, certain politicians owe to AIPAC and certain politicians get kicked out because of AIPAC, and it would be good to get rid of AIPAC. But yeah, I don't think you're going to get a democratic Palestine by getting rid of AIPAC. I mean, it would help, but I think this is, I don't know. I guess at this point, I don't really see it going the way I want or the way is right, just because it's right. But it's always good to have a vision of what's right. So that's about as far as I can go. I like to fight what's wrong, I don't think it's easy in this case.
I think that, I mean, I think it's a shame that not a lot more people in the US have even heard of the concept of one democratic state. Because we're hit over the head with two state. And that it needs to be introduced, I think, to the general public.
I think this is related to how, like, the British divide and rule, India from Pakistan, that there's been so much, North and South Korea, North and South Vietnam, East and West Germany. they love that, you know, and Palestine is divided into two groups that are then posed in the public mind as eternal enemies. You know, it's just it really serves empire to have them divided. I don't know. What do you think?
Definitely,
Ireland, North and South. They love
yes.
divisions.
So with the way that we discuss at One Democratic State, we talk a lot about the politicization of identities, which is what you describe. It's saying, okay, we have two people, then we're going to have two countries, or we have two people, each of them have a certain representation, or like this kind of things, which create it creates divides, but it also creates transform states into war machines. As same you described before about nationalism, it comes with this idea of like blood. So
Blood and soil.
exactly. So it's working towards towards depoliticizing identities is one of the elements. And another aspect in what you were saying, that we like having a vision. It's a bit of the role that we are trying to have. It's on one hand to do advocacy and to have more people hear about ODS as a vision, and also to while we are doing some actions towards this vision, we are not focusing on the means to reach the liberation, but more of what is this liberation? So what is the vision? So it's like working hand in hand with people who are more focused on the means of action, and having the complementarity here. Yeah, so that's the main idea. I liked what you said. I don't remember which one of you. I think Maya, it was maybe you who said that so because it's so related to the US, there is a need to change the system in the US to be able to change something or to have an impact in Palestine. And that's where the Green parties come. I find it very interesting because we started this conversation where I was asking you what is the common, why this allyship is important. And yeah, I wanted to know if you wanted to maybe elaborate on this and on what role the Green Party can play in all of this.
Maya, would you like to jump in? I mean, I think that, well, the Green Party, it's I think that we have to, one of the things we need to do is a part of the structure that lets the status quo stay in place is this whole false dichotomy that we have in the US. I'm sure it exists in other countries too, which is, oh, well, you've got to put up with what we have here because it's either us or it's them. And that's when you don't get an alternative. And it's like, oh, we're going to have empire and we're going to have status quo forever. You need to have the alternative. And in the US, the Green Party is the largest alternative. You know, that's in the right direction. Obviously, there is a huge amount of barriers created by the status quo to keep the Green Party from being viable, but that does not mean that we cannot create the choice and that we shouldn't create the choice. We need that wedge. Maya, thoughts?
Yes, I mean, because we already know how the Green Party, for example, doesn't accept any funding from corporations. So there's no influence involved. The maximum funding, it's an annual 6,000 or 7,000 a year from individuals versus, let's say, the Democratic Party would get, or the Republicans, hundreds of thousands, if not more, from one individual or one corporation. And that's why, you know, we see the influence of everything on the political system. And as Janet said, it's going to remain, you know, it's the status quo. It has to change for foreign policy to change, not only on Palestine, but on everything, for all the policies to change for the better.
I mean, Ruth, you know, you're Bronx too. I'm sure you've seen it. It's like, for instance, give an example, our absolutely horrible representative, Richie Torres.
Yeah, I appreciate you fighting him faithfully. I've had a few so-called dialogues with Dinowitz.
You know, you know, it's a funny thing since you bring him up. Do you know he actually accidentally called me once?
Oh,
Which Dinowitz? Big Dinowitz or young Dinowitz?
Eric Dinowitz.
Eric, yeah.
Eric, yeah, it's to let other people know. Eric Dinowitz is one of our council members, and he's part of a sort of a political dynasty. There's Jeffrey Dinowitz, daddy, and then I don't want to say that diminutively. There's the father, Jeffrey Dinowitz, and then there's Eric Dinowitz. And there was a point at which we were pressing, and the Bronx Neighbors for Palestine were one of the big ones, pressing that the US accept and vote for a ceasefire. This was many months ago. We're way beyond that now. And so I actually called and left a message on Eric Dinowitz's office saying, I want you to vote for a ceasefire resolution.
In the council. In the council. Oh, okay.
Council. And he must have thought I was somebody I wasn't, because he called me back.
oh.
What do you say?
And he's like, oh, well, I wanted to know what this was. And I said, well, you know, we're looking for a ceasefire. And there's this pause. And he's like, well, and I'm paraphrasing because this was a while ago. There was this pause in his voice. And he's like, well, yeah, but the issue is, what do you do after ceasefire? I said, well, and this feeds in beautifully. I said, well, then what you need to do is you need Nuremberg tribunals for the war criminals, and you need to implement single state. And he choked.
Oh, no, single state, no, I mean, their whole political thing is about the Jewish state. That is like everything for them.
I know. And I made a very big point of saying, hey, listen, I'm one of your Jewish constituents. And I'm arguing this on the basis of justice. And he's like, well, I don't think that's fair. He's like, what, you know, people have a right to their own country. And I'm like, well, yes.
Like the Palestinians have a right to their own country?
Yeah. And
yeah.
yeah. And I wouldn't argue as a Jewish white person, I wouldn't argue, well, I have a right to the US. No, I share it. And he, at the very end, he said, well, thank you for your opinion and send me a copy of the resolution. Bye, click.
But that's interesting that he talked with you.
By mistake.
Yeah, but I mean, he actually back and forth for like 4 or 5 exchanges.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Yeah, I think he was so shocked. He didn't know what to say. And I'm glad he didn't just hang up. But it was
because okay, because you know, when you said, when we were talking about Gillibrand, that she refuses to meet, they said you can send an email, and I've sent so many, like 100 emails and phone calls, and it's an automatic response. Like, we would send an email regarding ceasefire, that's at the very beginning, and the response would be, yes, we stand with the people of Israel. We're like, it's so generic, and they don't even read it, the emails.
Maybe we should go there, you know?
We went, and they didn't allow us. Janet and I and a few other people went there, and they just didn't let us even to deliver a letter to the staff.
We could try again.
I think we should try again, and with more people, and like catch her, like find out when we could catch her.